Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I'd like to introduce our guest speaker tonight, arborist Pete Bohman. Pete and his wife Betty live in North Monmouth and have for 11 years now. He worked for BIW for 38 years. He has now retired. Pete has been involved with the American Chestnut Foundation for many years now, since the 1990s, early 1990s. And he is now in charge of the two orchards, which are in East Winthrop, and I believe it's on Case Road, isn't it?
It's on Case Road, right?
Yeah. He grew up on a dairy farm and has always been very interested in nature. So, Pete, you got the floor.
Thank you, Linda. You can have my chair. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me here. Who's Mary?
Mary?
He's coming right here. That's Mary.
Mary, thank you for inviting me here. And Linda? I don't have a PowerPoint, but I have oh, this is dripping with history in here. It's about orchard history, American Chestnut Foundation history, and all of that. I figured that's what we need to hear. But I'd rather talk about myself than that, because it's my favorite topic. So we'll spend most of the time at that. So I was, like Linda said, I grew up on a farm, dairy farm out in Wisconsin. And it was a time in the early 60s when we were waiting for the bomb to come across the Atlantic Ocean. And they were building bomb shelters, remember? And so we thought we'd outsmart them Ruskies. What we would do is grow everything that we needed on the farm, everything. We had apples and chickens and pigs and potatoes and cabbage and everything. Except we couldn't get salt. We haven't had that figured out. Couldn't have salt or Cheerios. So because of that, I think I just love to grow things. And my favorite was apple trees, actually. We had 20 acres of apples. And my favorite was going out with my grandfather to take out the old apple tree and put in the new one. Because the way he took out the stump was dynamite. And he would try to blow it just as high as he could to thrill us grandchildren. We'd run and hide behind something. Anyway, so apple trees were one of my favorite crops to grow, but of course you had to grow corn and all that. So that was me. And I ran because I could see a herd of cows that needed milk in every day the rest of my life. And there's no vacation from that. That is every single day. You can't give a herd over to a stranger. That's your herd. Why, you must be a farmer's daughter.
No, I'm not.
I saw the head.
So did I.
Yeah. So I ran to the U.S. Navy and I went just as far as I could go, San Diego. And I didn't tell you that I grew up near Green Bay. So I was in the middle.
Yeah.
But when I got to boot camp, I was a non-traditional, and because I was 2 years older than the rest. So they put me in charge of the service line. We had a service week, and the sailors started coming in, and they grabbed their trays, and they were hungry, and they were rushing to the line where you scoop whatever you had onto their trays. On they went, and so I scooped mine, and I put it on the tray, and I looked at it, I said, "Holy smokes, what's this?" And I started mixing it up. So a chief jumped on my back. He said, "What are you doing to my nice lasagna?" I said, "I'm stirring it, sir, I'm stirring it." I'd never heard the word lasagna. That was 22. I never heard it. That what didn't happen in Wisconsin. I never had a taco. I didn't know how to say taco. I said taco. They dressed me up I dressed up in white for my little black tie, my little Dixie cup cap, and I went to the San Diego Zoo, and I was hungry, you know, I got a half a day off. I went up to a kiosk and I said, "Oh, I'd like two of them tacos." He said, "They're tacos." I said, "Okay, do it." That's how naive I was. But I, I grew plants. That's all I knew, farming. So that was me. I made it here to Maine through Brunswick Naval Air Station. And then I got out of there because my little girls didn't know me when I came back from deployment, didn't want to know me. They didn't know who I was when it hurt me. So I said, "I'm out of here." And I spent 38 years in Bath Iron Works like I was told, but when I was there, I didn't put much effort into chestnuts because I was tired. I mean, I got up at 4 and I went to bed at 10 or 11, like to see the news. So the way I got involved in the American Chestnut Foundation, which I had a neighbor who lost his wife, and I lost my phone. No, there it is.
You haven't gone anywhere.
Okay, right. I'll put it in. All right, the way I got involved in American Chestnut Foundation was that I had a neighbor and he lost his wife, and he was 80 in his 80s. So back then, I think it was mid 80s, maybe mid 1980s. Back then, there was this scare where if you announced that you were going to a funeral for your wife, somebody might move into your house and take all your silverware. So I was on crutches at the time. I had fallen off and I broke a foot. And so I offered to sit in his house. He was 200 yards up the road. We were in the country, really. He was 200, and I had never met him. And he said, "Yeah, sure, that'd be good." So I sat in his house while he went to the funeral.
You could have
And yeah,
taken everything.
yeah, no, I was on crutches. Couldn't lug it. So didn't think of that. So that's how I met this man. And so he was lonely. So I went to visit him every single night at 8 o'clock. And I walked into his house, and so I didn't scare him when I walked into his living room because I knew he was sitting in his corner watching Walker, Texas Ranger. I say, "Hey, Bob, I'm here." And I walk into his living room and he looked at his watch. I said, "Oh, geez." You know. I get in there, fall asleep because he had it in 80 degrees in there. But for a diversion, I took him to the Audubon Society in Falmouth because I heard there was some old men that was coming in there and going to give a talk on American chestnuts that were disappearing. So I thought, holy smokes, I ought to go pick up on that. Maybe I can pass it on to my grandchildren if I ever have grandchildren, which I did. So that's how we got involved in Chestnut Foundation. I just thought, that's a great endeavor. Bring them back if we can. So from there, after I retired in 2013, I got really involved. Too involved, I think, huh? I spend my summers out there in the orchards. So a lot of my summers, I have to say. So let me tell you about the orchard. The orchards are on Case Road, and everybody knows Case Road if you're all from Winthrop, right? You go the East Winthrop post office, and if you could go straight, you'd be almost on Case Road. You just keep on going down. There's the cats on the left. What's the name of the cats? I can't remember.
Pals.
Pals. That's it. Before you get to them, there's a big cell tower on the left. And there is one of the 4 orchards in Winthrop. And that orchard is, I'm going to say, half planted because you can only plant so many seeds because you only have so many seeds.
You actually plant seeds,
Yeah,
not.
not plants because, well, I'll tell you that later, but that's a good point. We plant seeds. And the first year they grow so, and then they grow 3 feet a year. There's prolific as poplar.
Wow.
They can outgrow a poplar, I'd say. Yeah. Really some, so that, though that orchard there has 2,700 trees so far, except for the ones I called out. Because what we do, when they get up to this big around at this height, we actually inoculate them with a blight. And if they can withstand that, we let them go and we cut their brothers and sisters down. And then we inoculate them again with a stronger blight below it. See if they can withstand that. And this is the whole orchard, as long as they're that big around, because if they're smaller than that, at this size, you just kill them. It wouldn't learn a thing. So the big ones are 30 feet anyway. And that they were
Wow.
planted in 2013. You gotta
Yeah, I
figure.
remember when you
I
were
mean,
planting.
yeah, if you're good at math, that thing is growing. And not only that, but they're that far apart.
Oh,
So can you imagine what the roots look like underneath the ground? But you only have so much land. I mean, land is valuable. You can't spread them out like they did up in Highmore. Highmore had same thing. That's where we got the seeds, some of the seeds. And that is, I think they're 7 feet apart. I think they are. They were. They're all cut down now. They were called a breeding orchard up in Highmore. What these are out in East Winthrop are seed orchards. They're different. They're different. They've all, when you have a breeding orchard, you don't give them the blight. You want those seeds as long as you can get them. But we ran out of uses for Highmore and they cut them all down, all them off.
are you the only ones in these?
Oh, no. There's, I'm gonna say there's 20 orchards in the state of Maine. Camden,
Did you get some?
Camden, Pittsburgh, Orono, Winthrop.
You don't.
I can't remember all of them, but up in Newport, there's 4 orchards up in Newport. So they're all over. And so this is the main chapter of the American Chestnut Foundation. And there is a chapter in every state from here to Georgia, except New Hampshire and Vermont got together because they're small states. And Rhode Island got in with Connecticut, I think. And I don't know, but Delaware is in with somebody also. But Maine is one of the most enthusiastic chapters of the bunch. It's true. And I pass out work gloves. People show up to work. It's great.
And you started the chapter, didn't you?
No. That's the scientist. I'm just the worker. If you want the science of this, you get the wrong man up here. Just a farm boy. Yeah. So it wasn't me that started it. It was.
I got the impression that you were the first to do.
I know I'm not one of the big boys. I'm a little boy. I have 2 mentors. I have 2 mentors, and my hope someday is that they will actually agree on what they tell me. So the land that these are planted on is given to the American Chestnut Foundation for 30 years. And after 30 years, if there's chestnuts left and the people want them, that's good. We're moving on. If they don't want it, what's there, they can cut it down if they want, or we'll cut it down. So the small woodlot owners of Maine donated this land for us, you know. And not only that, they took out the rocks, they took out the stumps, and they cleared everything out for us. So that's all we had to do is go in and plant. It was great. They were really good to us. So, okay, so that was one orchard right there, 2,700 trees. Now, right now, except for the ones I took out. And then you go down 250 yards on the left again, and there's a road that goes through a gate back into the woods, and people use that. They can't drive back in there because there's a sign that says, please don't drive back in here. I do all the time because anyway, people walk their dogs in there and out. Back in there, there's 3 orchards. So that back in there is 3 times what you'd see at the bottom of the cell tower. Whatever 2,700 times 3 is, that'd be close to the number of trees back in there. So
They're all chestnut trees?
they're all American chestnut. However, now we're getting into science, so this is kind of fuzzy. They have, the first thing they do is they find a mother tree in the woods of Maine, and they're out there. They're out there, right?
Absolutely.
On your land, there was 3 of them, big ones.
Yes.
Not huge, but big. And what they do is they go up there and dust them with a pollen from a Chinese chestnut. So when you bag the nuts so the squirrel doesn't get it, or the blue jay. Blue jays are worse than squirrels. If that nut drops to the ground, it's gone overnight. Mice, turkey, deer, it's just like cocaine on the ground.
What size are they?
What's that?
What size are they?
Yeah, oh boy.
I'm just.
They're as big as that thumbnail,
Oh,
maybe a little bigger, very small.
well, I was wondering about the birds getting in, so.
Oh, the blue jays will pick them and go
Well,
and
yeah,
bury
I
them
see. I
and have a ball doing
was
it.
picturing.
Anyway, so they bag them. And then in the fall, in October, when things are getting bright and dry, they go up there and they pick that nut. Well, that nut is 50% Chinese and 50% American. And what the idea was to get the Chinese resistance to the blight into an American tree and then breed it back to American over 3 times, and then back to the Chinese again, and then back to the American 3 more times, and back to the Chinese. Yeah, that's why. So what we have out there is the 5th generation of what this is all about. And that up in Kymore was the 4th generation.
Because they grow so fast.
They grow fast. You can pick a nut off them. I've seen it in 3 years, but we have to wait until there's 150 of them to plant another plot. We need 150 nuts off that tree. They're all in one plot, 150 nuts in the ground. So we have to wait 7 years to start picking the nuts off the trees we plant to go on to the next generation, right? That's why out there at East Winthrop, the orchards aren't fully planted. There are orchards in Maine that are fully planted. And I was kind of last in line because I'm a little guy. Remember, a big guy and a little guy?
So what kind of soil do you need to grow these? Does it grow just in anything or?
Well, they're persistent, I tell you. What we have out in Winthrop used to be farmland. And I know that because I found this big hay rake fork that broke off, tine that had broken off a hay rake. So right next to a rock, poor farmer. So anyway, that soil is absolutely fabulous out there. I mean, I've been told that that was one of the better looking orchards in Maine because of the soil. We planted them in reclaimed gravel pits down in Pittsburgh. It's all gravel, but they grew.
We have clay.
Clay is tough for anything. I can't, except making pots. It's tough. It's tough. And they have a tap root, so you can't grow a tree this high and say, oh, I'm gonna dig that up and replant it. Now, you can't do it with chestnut. Take a nut, put it in the ground. Unless the turkeys get smart. Who's asking about, do you plant, oh, you were planting a tree or a nut. We're planting nuts, and up in Newport, the turkeys figured out that if you reach down there, that little plant coming up out of the ground in, oh, I'm gonna say July,
It's on and on.
they pull that out just for the nut. And one after the other. And we put these tubes around them to keep the rabbits and the mice away from them, 2 inches into the soil. And the tubes are 18 inches tall. So they would have a neck long enough to reach down there and pull that. So what we had to do, we had to start in January, and we've already started this year in January in a greenhouse with all these little chestnut seedlings. And you take them and you cut the nut off, so the turkey pulls one out and he can't find the nut, and hopefully he doesn't pull them all out looking for the nut.
I know it's smart.
So my job is to keep the turkeys away, keep the mice away, keep the rabbits, and especially the deer.
Oh, yeah. They
So
can
the-
eat them right off the tree.
The deer will eat everything. They'll kill that tree when it's this tall. They eat everything off of it. The tree doesn't have a chance. And they do it by browsing. It's unbelievable. So what we did was, we found this electric fence. It's solar powered, right? So it was supposed to be this high, right? And then 4 feet in was 3 high. So it'll be like 6 feet up, or not 6, 5 feet up maybe. There'll be 3 wires going up. And this outer one, perimeter, would be this high. So a deer will go right under that, right through the next one. He doesn't care about electricity. So some genius, I wish it was me, that was not me. They took this little piece of tinfoil and they put peanut butter in it and onto the fence every 20 feet. Which doesn't sound like much, except that there's no self-respecting deer that'll go past the smell of peanut butter. And they smell it from a good distance. So every generation we had to,
But they eat it.
well, they try. That's a good point. They would. So every generation of deer, we have to educate. So when they go up their little moist noses, their little Bambi type, and they'll sniff that and get educated and scamper away. So I have to tell you, it works. It works good. It does. But you have to,
That would work at people's houses where they have lilies.
absolutely, it would.
Stuff that keeps
They're
getting.
not gonna go after the lily when there's peanut butter. I'm telling you, peanut butter is a draw. It's so much of a draw
There's
that
our answer.
there was some bird was pushing the tinfoil. There was not tinfoil, but it was tin. They're getting in there and picking the peanut butter out, and I thought, it's gotta be a turkey because it's that high off the ground. How can it be anything else? It's gotta be a turkey or crow. No, not a crow. Well, one day I found out what it was. I couldn't believe it. It was a woodpecker. He sit right on there, pick away at the peanut butter. Everything has peanut butter.
I mean, I'm related to all those.
Yeah,
Peanut butter.
yeah.
Oh, goodness.
But one thing about that fence, you have to tend it. You have to keep it ready, working well, keep the weeds and the grass and all that. So one of my big jobs was tend that fence, keep the weeds away, and to mow the orchard and to prune the trees. So I had a job. You're talking 2,700 trees in the smallest place, smallest orchard. There must be, I'm gonna say, at least 6,000 trees in a big orchard or more, 8,000.
And you do that one too.
I do that one too. I am the crew leader.
And you thought you retired.
Yeah, right. And I'm the crew. So anyway, so I thought it was a good endeavor, and I enjoy being out there in the wild doing this. I have some notes here that I don't want to. You guys brought me in here to talk, and I live to talk. Okay, so I have only two topics to go through. One of them is a little bit sad, and that is back in the 1990s or earlier, these three geniuses came up with a plan. And what they were going to do was they were going to mix DNA together from Chinese and American. And they were going to get an American looking tree that had the resistance of the Chinese. And that took, I wish I knew how many generations of tree, but a tree is takes 7 years to grow. That's one generation at minimum. So this is not working like it should have. Right? They die. They die. You give them the blight and they die. They can't fight it. And why? Well, we couldn't figure it out. They figured there were 3 responsible genes in that or in that Chinese chestnut that could fight that blight. There's 3 genes in there. So you plant 250,000 trees, you're going to get a couple of them with that combination that could fight that blight. Well, it turns out we found out year before last, it's not 3, it's 18. 18 genes. And there was no way that the human population can plant that many trees. I do want to say this about in the late 1920s, early 1930s maybe, when this blight was coming. Did you all know where the blight came from? Brooklyn, Brooklyn, New York, at the what do you call it?
Botanical garden.
Arboretum there.
Yeah.
They brought them in there, and it was an honest mistake, because the Chinese chestnut gives off a delicious nut. Now, one of these things about these nuts, you can pick them off the tree and eat them. You don't have to cook them, you don't have to bake them, you don't have to get all mushy at Christmas by around the campfire. You eat them, they're good, they're delicious. So they brought the trees in maybe for a diverse thing in their arboretum, but also for the farmers. The farmers down in Virginia and West Virginia, and they were making a livelihood out of these chestnuts, these huge, huge chestnuts. The ground would be full of birds, and they would go out and collect them all up and cart them off into the big cities like Philadelphia and New York and Baltimore, and they would make money. People would store them up in their attics, deep chestnuts, because they were a staple. You could make bread out of them, I heard. I don't know, I never had any, but you could do anything with them. Everything loves them, everything. Let me count. No, I don't do it. Anyway, can't remember where it was. But anyway, back in the 30s, they figured, well, the blight's coming. What we'll do is we'll overpower the blight with population. We'll just keep on planting and planting and planting, and someday there's going to be a tree out there that can resist that blight. Didn't happen. They gave up. Right? Now, I told you the sad part. Now the good part. The State University of New York works in DNA. And they are working on the chestnut. And they think they have what might be the super tree that can resist the blight by putting a gene from a wheat into a chestnut. I don't know, that's science, and I get kind of fuzzy on that, but they think it's going to happen. And now what we're waiting for is the federal government to okay it, because what you're making is a Frankenstein tree. They don't know what it's gonna do out there, right? So they have to think it over before they allow us to go ahead with this. But scientists are pretty optimistic about this. And we're depending on New York. They call it SUNY, the State University of New York, and we're depending on them. And so what we have done, is that been for nothing? No, that's not been done for nothing. We have out there in East Winthrop probably 24 different lines of genetic material standing. So you pick a leaf and you got the genes of what's ever in that tree. And so we were told all that work was not for naught. So thank you.
When you talk about putting light, how do you do that?
Good question. So, you know what a lever punch is? You punch
Yeah.
holes or,
Yeah.
well, there's an 1/8 hole leather punch. You right to the bark and you twist it and you pop it in it. And what it sounds like is a cucumber breaking. Boom, it goes. So it takes out a little tiny piece of bark. And then
God,
they have grown this light in agar, little dishes of agar over in Vermont or New Hampshire. I can't remember just where they're from. And we have representatives from the American Chestnut Foundation. Bring them over and document everything. Everything you do is documented. So, and then you put that on there and put a little piece of tape on there so it doesn't get washed out before the light gets in underneath the bark. Once it gets underneath the bark, there's no getting it out. It's
on
cold.
any part of the tree or?
No, you always 18 inches. You gotta keep it high enough because you're gonna come in there with a more severe form of blight and put it underneath it. So in a year, you see their canker will get like that in a year. Oh yeah, that blight's
Does it make it
awful.
not?
What, and just make it not? The tree tries to fight it, it starts to grow over it, but it can't. Well, we found out it can't. The American chestnut cannot do it yet.
Huh.
So,
You didn't bring pictures, did you?
well, I don't know if I can find it. And I wouldn't want to stand up here and look through those pictures. There had to be 13,000
I
pictures.
just like, if you had any picture, maybe even on your phone.
Those right there on my phone.
That light.
It's got 13,000 pictures
Yeah.
to look through.
Where's it at? I can't find it. I couldn't find it. Yes, ma'am. Oh, before we ask questions, I want to tell you the questions I love. All right. Here's one question I really like to hear. Should I bring work gloves to this work party?
Yeah, can I have?
I bring my own lunch for Saturday? No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be funny.
I was just going to ask you
Oh,
if this
sorry.
blight would spread to other trees
Once you put
other
it
than
in.
the chip.
That's what,
But then when you do find blight, do you have to burn those trees, or how do you get rid of them if the blight doesn't go to something else?
that's oh boy, they wrestled with that question. And right now, the federal government's wrestling with the same question you're asking, right? So what we do is we burn the blight part of it, right? However, that's a fungus. And a fungus has spores. Who knows where those spores are? They could circle the world for 7 years before they landed on something or someone. But I will tell you a little tiny story about American chestnut. I'm gonna pick a date. It's not a real date. I'm lying to you with the date. I'm gonna say 1890 or 1870, where there was deep soil out in the Midwest. And the farmer from Pennsylvania said, boy, I'd like to go out in that deep soil in Wisconsin. And that's true, it's deep soil. So he packed up, and the last thing he packed up was a bag of chestnut seeds, nuts. They planted out there in Salem, Wisconsin, which is near Milwaukee. And until 5 years ago, that was blight free. Because the wind comes from the west, and that didn't take the spore out there. But now they've got it, and they're dying. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Without being
purpose
put
to-
on there.
What?
Without anybody putting it on me. It-
Right.
Is the purpose to save these trees, to save them because they were here and happy? Or do we use the nuts, we produce the nuts and do something with it? Or
Good point.
is it,
Yeah, good point.
what do we do with the tree?
The only thing I can say is we saved the eagle. Anybody remember that? The eagle eggs were getting really thin and they couldn't figure out why. They thought they figured out why, but look at all the eagles around. And so that is a success. So we were hoping that we could do the same with the American chestnut. But remember that I told you that down in the southern states, these chestnut trees, the side of the mountain would be just white with pollen. Well, not pollen, but the
Blossom.
blossoms. And the blossoms hang down like this, the tendrils. The male pollen blossoms, and they're white. Well, they start out white, and they smell, right?
Chinese ones.
And Chinese and American, they smell.
Chinese are real.
And what I've always said about the chestnut flower is it's like Scotch whiskey. And that is 50% of you can't stand Scotch whiskey and the other 50% love it. Same with the smell of the chestnut. It smells like cornmeal to me. And it's just a different smell, but it's a strong smell. Of course, it's got to be strong because of all, when they flower, they flower. The sides of the mountains will be white like the snowfall down in Virginia's, in Pennsylvania, in Georgia. So I almost forgot that part. They do smell. I got to give you that. And do you like the smell?
No, exactly.
No, well, I don't either. But some people love it.
Smell like cornmeal.
Cornmeal,
That's not a bad smell.
maybe to you.
Maybe only the smell of.
Well, I only
Yeah.
smell it in a little.
Yeah, right. Stand underneath the chestnut tree and then tell me what you think.
When do they blossom? When do they start? At what age do they start blossoming?
I'm gonna say June. June, they'll blossom.
Okay, but at what age do they have
Well,
blossoms? Right
3
away?
3 years, they can start.
Okay.
Then they get really
I'm wondering
going.
when I'm gonna visit them. And,
Yeah, no, well, for the flower?
well,
Yeah, early July, I would.
early
Yeah,
July.
yeah.
Are we able to visit
Absolutely.
and go in it?
You can do whatever you want in it.
Okay.
We smell the corn.
Well,
You know, it's open.
I bet it's a pretty blossom.
And I took down all the fences because the trees are tall enough now that I didn't have to tend fences. That's a big job, by the way. The
Yeah.
time-consuming job, putting peanut butter in. Anyway, so,
Glad you told us that.
That's why the smell of the store.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how do you buy your peanut butter?
peanut butter.
Is it a little?
By the drum.
Yeah.
At one point you said you had two topics. Have you done both of them?
Yes,
Okay.
the good part was that and I believe them, it's just that I'm getting a little too old to move along on the next when these are, when these are approved, we'll start again. I can plant, but to take on 3, 4 orchards, I can't do that. I mean, just too much for me.
Well, you just gonna have to have a buddy.
Yeah, everybody.
When you inject the trees with the blight, what's the percentage of the trees do you lose?
Linda, that is a tough question. That's not a tough question, but it's a sad question.
A lot.
All of them,
Wow.
right? All of them.
Where do you get the blight? What's
They-
it made of?
It's made of the actual blight of a chestnut tree. And what they do is they get it and it's a fungus, is what it is. And they put it in agar and it grows in the agar and we put it into the tree.
How do you know how can you tell that tree's got a blight? What happens once you inject it?
It starts to, well, first thing it does is split right through that little 1/8-inch hole. The bark will split right there and then it'll start to die off back and back and back and it'll get, all funky.
So
And the
why-
tree tries to fight it by growing bark back over it, but they can't do it.
So why do you keep doing this if you lose all?
Well, we didn't know that till 2 years ago. Huh? But now, we're gonna hope for the
Yeah.
best.
DNA? It's good.
Because I have to say something about, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, out of those 2,700 trees, for example, you have not found one tree that is resistant to blight, but you're hoping to find at least one. And that will be the big,
That would be, I would be like the hero. They'd all be coming to me asking questions.
Why did this?
I wouldn't blame them. Coming to me. Where was that? Yeah, I can't remember where I was gonna go. But so that is our endeavor. Oh, I wanted to say, go ahead.
I have a dumb question. So what's the difference between the chestnut trees like you planted and what my husband calls a horse chestnut tree?
Okay. The horse chestnut, the chestnut is a chestnut. Chinese chestnut is chestnut. European chestnut. There are some oaks that are not oaks or chestnuts, but they're a little different. Horse chestnut is a rose. A rose.
ROSD.
Yeah. It's in that family. I don't know why. I didn't name it.
It's science.
That's them people. Sometimes. And if they lied to me, I wouldn't know it.
Well, I have such confusion because we have this huge chestnut tree is what I've always called it. And my husband said, no, it's a horse chestnut tree. You guys see it every
No,
year.
but he's right.
And, he said we can't eat the nuts that are in that.
Not unless you're tough.
So he's
Because
like,
it is-
don't even.
It is bitter.
After you smell the other ones.
No, it doesn't have prickly, but it has these huge pods.
Yeah, well, same with the American chestnut.
Yeah.
Same.
I don't think.
You
that-
throw them at when you were a kid, you threw them at your brother, right?
Oh, yeah. No, not me.
Yeah,
I
right.
wasn't living there when I was a kid. And I don't have a brother, so.
So, I should have started out with, it's too late now.
I could be wrong, but I think the horse chestnuts, the genus is Aesculus.
Yes, yes.
Is it?
Yeah.
What's
And
that?
So they call it, the horse chestnut is just common name. But the
Sure.
But the genus,
Yeah.
is a Aesculus.
Is that in the rose
That
family?
rose.
That I couldn't tell you, but it's,
Well, Mr.
but it-
Google knows everything and some of it's right.
well, it's just, it's a different genus, that's all. But people call them horse chestnuts, or they call them chestnuts.
Yes, and I wonder if they fed horses with them, if they boiled them and boiled the tannin out of them to feed a horse. I mean, who knows, you know, why they got a horse chestnut.
Some of the aesculets have been the cultivars that people want. I can't think of the names of the cultivars, but some of them are got a pink flower and.
Oh, yeah, there's one over here
Yeah,
with pink flowers.
and they hold up because they're not a,
Yeah,
they're not.
so I should have started out with this, and you don't want me to start over. The chestnut is technically, scientifically extinct. It's gone. There aren't enough of them up there to bring it back. So what we're hoping is we can bring it back, although it is theoretically extinct. Well, they thought the same thing about the eagle. They thought, hey, it's gone. Our national symbol is gone, but it's back. It's all over the place. So maybe this can be done. I don't know. I hope it can be done. Say the prayer, please, for our grandchildren, because it is a magnificent tree. If you looked at the hills of West Virginia, you would see the big pines and the big spruces, of course, poking in 300 years ago, poking above everything else. But above the oaks and above the maples and above the ash was the chestnut, because they can grow higher. So it's a magnificent tree.
So the trees in Virginia, they have so many, they aren't any good? They all have the blight? Oh my.
So the blight started in maybe 1913 or something like that, out of Brooklyn. And it went south and it came north. But it took a while to get to all the way up here, right? So, but it has come here, and it's all the way up to Millinocket, which is the farthest north that chestnut can grow because it needs so much of a growing season. And up there, you get the frost too early, and it would, or too late, actually. Too late, it'll kill the flowers. So down here, they can still grow chestnuts because of our weather.
Would it be susceptible to these blights because they do put so much of their effort into growing, and that's why they're not strong enough to withstand the blight?
They grow three feet a year.
Yeah, well, that's unusual, isn't it, for a tree?
Well, poplar can do it.
Oh, and actually, I have some that grow upwards to 6 a year.
6 feet a year. Huh?
That's very aggressive.
Huh?
Do you feed them?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do we feed them? Do we feed them? Is that what you said?
I was asking that man that.
That's
What do you have here?
Do you think this is healthy?
Oh, yeah.
What do you have? Where did you get it?
I just went up to my driveway.
And
Those are the ones I thin
These
out.
are the ones he sends out.
I have
wow.
8 clumps
But you can
on
see
my
the,
driveway.
Yeah, see the chest, see the blight. Oh, thank you.
and I have some.
Hers?
No.
There's the blight right there.
Chestnut tree.
I have some now.
That one could very well have been
Yep.
inoculated,
And,
and that's how it dies. And then when it gets around the other side of the trunk, the top dies.
I guess that died.
He cut it off. Jay cut it off.
yeah, no, it was, I planted trees, 15 years ago or so, and they grew up reasonably well for maybe 7+ years, and they were putting on 1/2 inch plus growth rings. So
Yeah.
when they finally died, I had some that were 8-10 inches in diameter after,
Yeah.
less than 10 years.
So my two mentors, one is from Bangor, and one is from Camden.
Is that Eric?
Yeah, Eric.
Yep.
And, they say, oh, thin those out. They tell me which ones. And I say, yeah, give me a skidder, cause geez, they were huge. And, I was pulling them out with my lawn tractor because that's the only thing that would fit between the rows. But they were huge.
Actually, how long ago would it be? 12 years ago, I planted, students of mine, we planted 8 chestnut trees on the driveway up to the high school.
Oh, good.
They're 30+ feet tall. Might be 40 now.
It's still there.
When?
10, well,
8 years ago?
no, it's gonna be more than that. I've been retired.
Oh, might not be.
7, 10,
We should purchase.
probably 12, 15 years ago.
You give them soil, they go.
Oh, no,
They
they're
go.
doing great.
Who knows how, well, we could see how old this one is
Is
maybe.
that a trunk?
This is the trunk, yeah. This is a young tree, you call it.
Well, he cut down the big ones. These are just the suckers that are coming up.
Oh, this one loved it there. It's like putting on an inch a year maybe on this. This might not be more than 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And we're looking at the very bottom part of it. Can you imagine?
Peter,
Yeah.
what time do you want to leave?
I
What
gotta
time do you
go.
have to leave?
What time is it?
It's 10 off.
I
It
gotta.
only takes 5 minutes.